Good morning, everyone. Our opening words are from the Reverend Nancy McDonald Ladd. More love, a call to worship. We gather in community every Sunday in a state of conflict for our very souls, a state both expansively hopeful and restrictively confined. We are hopeful that we might rise to meet a new day for those who seek and who serve the Spirit. Hopeful that each and every one of us might encounter the sacred within, among, and beyond every human soul. And hopeful that such an encounter might work through us to topple the idolatries of our age. And yet, we also gather as a people who are not yet free, a people confined, unfree, contained. We are confined, unfree, contained, because in this culture of division built upon the pain of the people at the margins, even the decent people hold our love too tightly, putting it in boxes, prefacing it with qualifications. I will love you if, I will see you if, I will bear the truth of my soul alongside you if, and only if, you agree with me, you look like me, you stand like me, you think like me, you act like me, you sing like me, you wear your gender upon your sleeve and produce it upon demand. I will love you and will meet you in the sanctuary of our hearts, if and only if you give me evidence of your good liberal values. If and only if you never fail to speak the language of the movement, and never weep upon a street corner out of grief for your sheer inadequacy and the vastness of the struggle that you cannot even name. We are imprisoned by these ifs and only ifs. We are confined by the smallness of our loving, even as our souls remind us that we can only get free if we all get free together. And so today, as we intersect in honest work, let our hopefulness mingle with our conviction. Let our willingness to love beyond our expectations or experience break down our long-held barriers. Let our willingness to be honest about the hardest questions open us to new truths. May there truly be more love, with no labels, and no binary, and no preface, and no qualification, and no arithmetic, and no limit. May there be more love to liberate us all, and may we keep on today and every day until we find it and share it, inch by precious inch, with one another and the world.
Please recite with me our shared affirmation of mission. This fellowship is a welcoming, diverse, and nurturing beloved community that promotes progressive religious thought and practice to create a more loving, just, and sustainable world.
judgment cuts so deep. Will you carry a sword or a big gun? Pass it on, pass it on, pass it on. The gift of love is free, pass it on. Pass it on, pass it on, pass it on. The gift of love is free, pass it on. When the words of another have wounded your heart, will you lash out in vengeance and reaction? Oh, can you find the wisdom to give another chance and open your heart with forgiveness? Pass it on, pass it on. The gift of love is free, pass it on. Pass it on, pass it on. The gift of love is free, pass it on. May your wise and caring words comfort those in need and inspire a circle of goodness that travels o'er the world through every word and deed, bringing peace and loving kindness. Pass it on, pass it on. The gift of love is free, pass it on. Pass it on, pass it on. The gift of love is free, pass it on. The gift of love is free, pass it on.
We call this light before us in hope that we may always remain a strong community, working together to make the world a better place. The Church Where Everything Goes Wrong by Elea Kemler. 6 weeks into the church year, I have realized that I am the minister of a church where things usually go wrong. This morning, the copy machine jams repeatedly. The bulletin describing the order of service has been copied with the second page first and also upside down. No one has remembered to turn on the lights in the sanctuary before the service, so it's dark because it's raining outside. The microphone is buzzing and lets out a painful, high-pitched squeal which makes people wince. We have just started the service when someone runs up with a bunch of flowers for the altar, just as someone else runs in with one of the silk arrangements we keep for the mornings when no one brings real flowers. There is laughter as the two flower bearers meet at the altar. They decide on the real flowers and things settle down for a while until a baby starts crying, which sets off another baby crying. I try to speak over the wailing as their fathers hustle them down the aisles and try to distract them in the back. Usually I love watching the tall, gentle fathers who bounce their babies in backpacks at the rear of the sanctuary, but today I am annoyed because I want it to be quiet and holy and lovely, and things are definitely not shaping up that way. The woman who is helping with worship gets up and instead of giving the announcements, introduces the candle lighting time, which comes later. People call out, "Not yet!" More laughter. The organist starts playing the wrong hymn and a couple of the choir members yell over the din for him to stop. A few minutes later, during the period for prayerful silence, he accidentally falls on the keyboard, causing the organ to emit horrible gassy noises. Shrieks and snorts of laughter. All pretense of Sunday morning decorum is lost, and something inside me, some furious, bossy desire to have my worship service go according to my plan, finally slides free, and I can laugh with them. This will be the first of many times that I laugh at Sunday morning details gone awry. It is also the first of many times that I imagine that God is watching, looking up or down or over or out at us from wherever God sits on Sunday morning, slightly amazed and maybe at a loss for words, because we, God's people, are so funny and wonderful and odd all at the same time. In moments like these, I imagine God as a sturdy old woman with her hands on her hips, or perhaps as a rabbi pulling on his long white beard. I imagine a God shaking his or her head and saying, "What in the world are they doing over there? This is what they call church? What were they thinking?" But I also imagine a God who is touched and maybe a little honored by our efforts, however halting, to worship and give praise. I imagine a God who is moved by our attempts to care for one another and to name the things we know as holy. There is a warmth in this congregation that is new to me, a simple friendliness that shines through the fumblings and failures, a love that makes the ragged edges smooth. I have always wanted to believe, really believe, that our mistakes aren't the most important parts of us. I have always wanted to believe that kindness and compassion matter more than anything. I sense that I can learn this here.
My sermon today is entitled The Church of Not Being Horrible. When I was called to my first settled ministry back in 2000, I was 100% sure that I had landed in clergy clover, the ultimate church of not being horrible. We'll call it the UU Church of Anywhere, Massachusetts. It was what often is called a plum, a thriving throng of 350 committed adults and many, many curious children gathering in a gorgeous mid-1800s Tudor building on a leafy suburban corner. They certainly saw themselves that way. So much so that the president of the congregation at the time quipped during my candidating week that they were such a gem and that I should be paying them to come and serve as their minister. Yeah, I know, a pretty big red flag as it turned out, but I was new, naive, dazzled, and determined. I received other cautionary warnings. At General Assembly the June prior to my startup, I sat down in my seat in the clergy choir, and when a colleague next to me saw my name tag, she said, "Oh, you're Robin Zucker. You're either very talented or very stupid," or both. I gawked at her with not even a clue of what she was getting at, but I figured it out soon enough. You see, I followed a bona fide UU ministry icon into the pulpit there. We'll just call her Reverend Jane. It didn't seem dumb to me or even risky at the time because I had no context for alarm. No one warned me. In fact, Jane herself encouraged me. In retrospect, I was a lamb to the slaughter. The interim they had engaged for 1 year had done the bare minimum to hold the mirror to their faces and made very little attempt to explain that ministers had different styles and that they weren't just calling another Jane. Well, this supposed plum shrunk and shriveled to the size of a prune as this tribe turned completely toxic. And this lovely congregation became a church whose behavior was distinctly horrible. When I cut my hair short, I was asked if I was gay and pretending to be straight. When I preached on social justice, I was told it was pretty good for a girl. People commented on my clothes, my legs, my personal life. The finance chair, who had been privy to my salary negotiations, quipped in front of a group of people that I sure got paid a lot for an amateur, and I evaporated. This promising start became a 3-year unintentional interim ministry from which I needed years to recover. I wasn't sure I was ever interested or able to serve in a congregation again, and I was crushed and disillusioned. If you are squirming over this story and these exceedingly rude and inappropriate comments and behaviors, good on you. It bodes well for the arrival of your next contract minister in August. Sadly, my story is not unique. It's a cautionary tale. Daily, particularly after this year and the grueling grind of ministry we've had to step up to. I read tales from the foxholes and bunkers of my colleagues, the ones they find themselves in, under duress and at war with boards and congregants over very resolvable issues and petty differences. And the resignations pile up like a stack of hymnals. Truth is, it is harder and harder to sustain this profession. And clergy cannot sustain a church of being horrible on their own or sustain themselves within one. To be clear, I'm not projecting that that's who you are or that you will fail with your next minister. Far from it. I believe in you and your future at Sedona UU Fellowship. Truth, trust, and faith, friends. That is the secret sauce. When your new minister begins, I ask you to lean into the best, most generous interpretations of events and actions, and to keep good faith, good dialogue, and open communication until such time that it is proven that good faith has been broken. And that can take a long time. You might wonder where I got this idea for the church of not being horrible, because it's kind of a peculiar way to put it, isn't it? This phrase originates with the liberal Christian pastor, John Pavlovich. He writes a very popular blog called Things That Need to Be Said. I highly recommend it to you. and I respect him a great deal. I wish this blog had been around to share with the good people of the Church of Anywhere, Massachusetts in 2000. Here's what he has to say about the Church of Not Being Horrible. And this is a description, is a good rubric for your own congregational visioning and self-reflection. He writes, I'm tired of professed Christians preaching a Jesus they seem to have no interest at all in emulating, of religious people being a loud, loveless noise in the world while claiming to speak for a God who is supposedly love. I know the world is tired of such people. I know America is tired of such people. And I'm fairly sure, he writes, that God is tired of it too. I'm starting a new church, he tells us. It's called the Church of Not Being Horrible. Our mission statement is very simple to remember. Don't be horrible to people. Don't treat them as less than worthy of love, respect, dignity, joy, and opportunity than you are. Don't create caricatures of them based on their color, their religion, their sexual orientation, their gender identity, the amount of money they have, or the circumstances they find themselves in. Don't seek to take away things from them that you already enjoy in abundance yourself. Civil rights, clean water, voting rights, education, marriage, access to healthcare, and women's reproductive freedom. Don't tell somebody's story for them about why they are poor, depressed, addicted, victimized, or alone. Let them tell their own story, just as you are allowed to tell your own story, and believe they know their story better than you do. Listen, actively listen for understanding rather than agreement, or until it's your turn to tell a relatable story. Just listen. Don't imagine that your experience of the world is everyone's experience of the world, that the ease, comfort, support, affection you may have received are universal. Don't be preoccupied with how someone else experiences God or spirit or worship or anything else that's so personal, how they define family, who they love, who they forgive. Cultivate your faith, your family, your relationships. The central question at any given moment in a congregation is, am I being horrible right now? I laugh, but it really isn't funny. We need to ask ourselves that question. Am I being horrible right now? If one concludes that they are, they endeavor not to do so. If they are unsure if they're being horrible, they allow other people to help them see their horrible blind spots of privilege, prejudice, ignorance, bullheadedness, rigidness, and then they respond. In other words, our sacred calling is to be decent, to be kind, to be compassionate, to be whatever it is we believe this place is lacking, to be the kind of people the world needs, the community needs, the congregation needs. And it definitely needs less horrible days these days. The Church of Not Being Horrible will gather every week to celebrate the inherent goodness of people. We'll share stories of the ways we succeeded in being less horrible to our families, coworkers, and strangers. And we'll challenge ourselves to be even less horrible in the coming week. We'll do this faithfully, repeatedly, and passionately. And hopefully, we'll begin to watch the world around us gradually become less angry, less bitter, less painful, less horrible. I agree with Pavlovich. And like him, I'm not sure such a religion will catch on. as being horrible seems to be trending these days among religious people. But I think it's worth a shot. I think it might alter our homes, our marriages, and our communities, if not the very planet that we are living on. It might renovate and refresh our very hearts, themselves so prone to being hurt and then horrible. It might help us become the best version of ourselves we are able to be, especially as we turn a new corner out of COVID and prepare to gather again in person in community. If you're interested in supporting or joining the Sedona UU Fellowship, you don't need to pray a special magic prayer. You don't have to recite any creeds or take a test. There are no theological or bureaucratic hoops you need to jump through. There is no conversion. There is only commencement and commitment. You simply begin right where you are in this very moment, seeking to be less horrible to the people you live with, work with, come across in the street, interact with online, see at a distance. That's it. This may seem like a very low bar to set, but it's actually a beautiful and somewhat novel aspiration lately for a congregation, making the world less cruel, less violent, less insulting, less horrible. If your vision statement for the next year is let's be less horrible, that may be enough. It sounds like a place that I would want to be a part of. How about you? In what ways could the Sedona UU Fellowship further grow into this paradigm? Your search committee, whom you trusted, selected a good person. A new minister will be among you. Will he be well met? Do you need this person to look like you, think like you, believe like you? In the words of the Reverend Nancy McDonald Ladd, will you put your acceptance in boxes, prefacing it with qualifications? I will love you if, I will see you if, I will bear the truth of my soul alongside you if, and only if, you agree with me, you stand with me, you act like me, you sing like me, you wear your gender on your sleeve and produce it upon demand. If and only if you give evidence of your good liberal values, if and only if you never fail to speak the language of the movement at all times. We become so used to ourselves that we don't always have an accurate picture of our projections or our expectations or our triggers until they pounce out of a clearing like a tiger. At home, maybe we don't see the clutter or the dust bunnies. At church, we may not recognize the cracks in the covenant. Friends, we don't need to be perfect or even close. How boring would that be? But we do need to be not horrible in all the ways Pavlovich so articulately names. My colleague, the Reverend Elea Kemler, charmingly lifts up her own imperfect congregation and the reading we heard earlier, the church where everything goes wrong. We recognize this too, right? It makes us human and real and a messy, marvelous group of humans doing our best with what we've got. It is what ministers long for when we enter service among you, self-aware, perfectly imperfect, non-horrible people. The Reverend Kemler, who has served since 2000 herself at the First Parish of Groton, Massachusetts, brings it home with her loving poke at the announcement out of order, the crying baby relay, the absent flowers, the annoying buzz in the microphone. And she laments, I imagine God shaking his or her head saying, what in the world are they doing over there? This is what they call church? What are they thinking? Yet Kemler minds the beauty of it all too, saying, But I also imagine a God who is touched and maybe a little honored by our efforts, however halting, to worship and give praise. I imagine a God who is moved by our attempts to care for one another and to name the things we know as holy. There is a warmth in this congregation that is new to me, she writes, a simple friendliness that shines through all the fumblings and failures, a love that makes the ragged edges smooth. I have always wanted to believe, really believe, that our mistakes aren't the most important part of us. I have always wanted to believe, she says, that kindness and compassion matter more than anything. She concludes, I sense that I can learn this here. May this congregation, this fellowship of not being horrible, offer the same opportunity to all who enter its doors, whether they inhabit the pulpit or the assembly. May this be a vision worthy of our days, and in Pavlovich's words, let's just have some church friends. Blessed be, blessed we, and amen.
Now is the time for silent meditation.
We have been warmed by fires we did not build. We have drunk at wells we did not dig. In gratitude of our many blessings and many needs, this morning's offering for this community will now be received.
One Love by Hope Johnson. We are one, a diverse group of proudly kindred spirits, here not by coincidence, but because we choose to journey together. We are active and proactive. We care deeply. We live our love as best we can. We are one, working, eating, laughing, playing, singing, storytelling, sharing, and rejoicing. Getting to know each other, taking risks, opening up, questioning, seeking, searching, trying to understand, struggling, making mistakes, paying attention, asking questions, listening, living our answers, learning to love our neighbors, learning to love ourselves, apologizing and forgiving with humility, being forgiven through grace, creating the beloved community together. We are one.
Blessed days and the dark, secret night, and I think to myself, what a wonderful world.
The colors of the rainbow, so pretty in the sky, are also on the faces of people going by. I see friends shaking hands, saying, how do you do? They're really saying, I love you.
We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
Those of us who journey back beyond primeval roots. Those of us who seek a dream which some won't comprehend. Those of us who travel far within the Spirit's flow know there is always more. Take the beauty of the desert with its glow of sunset gold. Take the highest peak and river's rumbling depth. Take the freshness of the earth and the restless heart of woman and of man. Then spill an ocean over them until all are lost in a wondrous sea of love. Bless the ancient mother of this crystal planet home. Bless the light which calls within our spirit and our soul. Bless the thirst in each of us to truly find our way, and be blessed within the oneness of divinity. Be the center of the journey. Be the soul of music's sound. Be the tide in perfect balance and the secret in the mist. Be the word which has no speaking in the poetry of life. Be the gift which makes your living such a total act of love. Be blessed, be centered, be love, and be peaceful in the flow.